Hi, I'm Andrew Hutchison again, and I'm showing you now how to approach the problem of shooting the photographs for 3D reconstructing a ship, sailing ship. So this is the Duyfken as it is right now at anchor, and as you can see it's tied up to a jetty on the Swan River in Perth, and it's got the problem photographing is that it's got all of these other boats in the way. That makes it very difficult to get good shots of the whole ship. So what I've done here is, I'm just going to take you back to the beginning of this image set. So I've got about 170, 180 images here. I'm going to quickly show you what my approach was. So I'm starting as far to the left as I can. I just can't get any further left because there's no more jetty. So I'm taking a picture and then I'm taking half a step to the right and taking another picture, half a step. So I just keep moving along about half a meter at a time. And this goes on and on and on. And then I'm moving along the jetty again and I'm covering as far as I can. And then I've come back and I'm shooting the same thing again from a slightly different angle. So this is going to give the software the best chance to put together all these images and work out what the shape and texture of the ship is. So now I'm moving a little bit closer again, moving down the main jetty, and this is giving lots and lots of different angles. Now as you can see, I'm taking these pictures as fast as I can while still being safe. The jetty's got ropes and all kinds of things I can fall over, so you need to be very careful. Now you can see I'm on the jetty that's closest to the Duyfken, and I'm shooting in as much detail. Now I'm so close that I can't get all of the height of the ship in one go, so I'm doing a top high shot, then a low shot, and then lower down again. And this is going to be fine as long as there's lots and lots of overlap. You can go backwards and forwards in the direction, from the left to the right. That's all going to be okay as well. So I'm just going to move along here. Now things will get in the way, like for example the jetty. You can see these tires here and these posts. Now we have to somehow separate the ship from the jetty, and the only way that can happen is if you get a lot closer and you look down into the gap between them. So once again, lots of overlap, slowly moving down the ship, and you can see all these amazing textures and the individual cut of the wood. Now here I'm deliberately looking all the way down to the water so that we've got images of the separation between the ship and the jetty. And this will be very important, and so forth and so on. So I'm just going to quickly skip through all of these images. And I'm going to show you how they turn out in the 3D reconstruction. So once again, there's all the images. Now here is the reconstruction we get. You can see this very ship-like shape. And you can see how the separation between the ship and the jetty is very clear, and how we've also reconstructed the gangplank. Now what's very powerful about this 3D reconstruction is that we get this big wide view of the ship without ever actually having seen that in a single camera shot. And I'm just going to turn on the cameras which look like this. So every one of these blue rectangles is where an individual camera shot was taken from. And you can see how the various cameras have been looking down and along this space between the ship and the jetty to get separation. Now, what we've got is the overview of the ship's shape. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to organize, just turning those cameras off, I didn't have time to organize a boat so that I could go out behind the stern and around the port side, but that certainly could be done, and in fact we are going to do that with the Duyfken. Okay, now I'm going to show you some of the extra features. Now, you can only do so much at a time, and you can see there's a big hole here where the main deck is, and I'm just going to show you how I solved that problem. So here are the images I took of the main deck. Now I'm shooting from as many possible points of view, and in this picture the point of view is from, I'm already walking up the ramp or the gangplank that goes onto the ship's side. So you can see I'm now moving into the ship's space. Once again, trying to get some of the side of the ship to create separation. And you can see while I was there, the crew were actually working on the ship, doing some maintenance, tightening the rigging. And I'm just working around them as fast as I can. I was only here for about an hour and a half in the late afternoon, and you can see the strong cross light, very bright here, but very dark inside. This is not ideal. In fact, you can see my camera gear down here in the way. So now I'm moving into the ship's deck, and here we go. This is the main hatch to the cargo area below. And so now I'm moving around the space of the main deck, shooting across the deck, shooting back away from myself as I'm moving around. And this circular motion means that this whole 360 area is going to be put together. But in this case, I can keep a common foreground in the middle. So this area, this hatch cover, which has unique textures, this is paint or bird shit or who knows, whatever it is, those textures are going to tie all of these images together in a really strong way. And once again, I'm overshooting quite a bit. So I'm just going to get out of there, and I'll show you what that looks like in this 3D. I'm just going to open up this section. Now this section doesn't look like the shape of a ship, but it certainly does show us the shape of the deck we were just on. So here's the main mast, here's the main cargo hatch cover, here's the steps going down, here's the windlass. Now this is good, and what's going to happen is that this model will be cleaned up and it will be joined with the earlier model. So this is how we're going to literally construct the ship piece by piece. But these wide shots don't give us quite so much detail. Now I'm zooming in here to the back of this cannon, which you can see there isn't so much detail of. So I decided, because that was a particular point of interest, that I was going to shoot that in some more detail. And I'll just show you those images. So this is how I shot the gun. And we're going to be going around the gun. So I'm treating the gun now as another whole object, like the teapot example. So I'm starting at one level and going around, very frequently taking pictures. Now, because I was in a big hurry and because it didn't seem very safe, I did not lean out over the rail of the ship and try and photograph the front of the cannon. But when I've got more time, I will organise to do that more safely. Now, I know from experience that to separate this ammunition box from the wheels and from this barrel, I'm going to need to get a lot of shots in between these shapes. But I also need to go back around the cannon and get this side higher up and then lower down. So going around in lots and lots of different heights. Once again, you can see some of my images are out of focus. I'm moving very, very quickly. But you can see all of this beautiful texture. I mean, this is a real working ship. This is out in the elements all the time. It gets broken, bashed, and rusted. So now we're back to this side again. And now I'm standing well over this detailed area where I want to look down into these spaces here to make sure we're getting really good separation. And in fact, you can see my shoe over here. And I was standing in one position for so many shots that in fact my shoe has become part of the scene, as I'll show you in a moment. So lots of detail, lots of texture, lots of separation. Now we're just going to close out of there, and I'll show you the results of that one. So there are all the images, and here is the resulting canon. Now you can see that there is as much detail and accuracy in this as there was with the teapot. And you can see the really great detail and separation that's occurring in here. So that's very satisfying. I'm happy to get that. Now, in fact, these images can be processed to a much higher resolution, but that requires a lot more computer time. I'm doing all of this on my own laptop, but when you send us your pictures of your Batavia, we're going to be doing this using much, much faster computers at Curtin University. This is my shoe. This is my own foot has got into the scene, but that can be removed by a 3D artist. I'm just going to turn on the texture for this one, and in a few seconds the texture will appear. I'm just going to give us a little bit more room to look at this with. You can see how photorealistic this is, particularly down here in these spaces which I photographed a lot of. So more detail means more photographs. An area where it didn't work out so well, and I will be more careful next time, is here. Now if we look through the gun port, we can see that this green material is, there should be clear space there, and I just did not get enough pictures looking down the barrel to get good separation in those spaces. And also underneath here, this is not the true shape of this gun carriage. So I should have put the camera down on the deck and gotten more under there. So for special features of particular interest, the more pictures you take of those, the more powerful that's going to be. And I'll just turn on the cameras so you can see all the pictures that I took as I went around this. Really a lot of detail, but done very, very, very quickly. I would have been working on that Canon for less than 3 minutes, I would think. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you are the pictures of the windlass. I haven't had time to render these into 3D, but once again, the windlass is a major feature on the ship, particularly on this smaller ship. And so you can see how I'm trying to fit the whole thing and treat it as a separate object once again. And here I am turning the camera around as I realize I can't get enough in. I'm being careful here to include this hatch cover because that's going to be very important for connecting this model of the windlass with the model of the whole main deck. And you can see my shadow down here. Once again, late in the afternoon, not a good time. Actually, the best lighting conditions are when you have got very overcast day, because you get no shadows and a very even light. Now, I'm going to do a very difficult thing here. I'm trying to get all the way around this, but it's extremely cramped. So I'm going to be climbing over these ropes like a monkey, and I'm just taking pictures very, very frequently, as fast as I can. Sometimes I'm pushing the shutter while I'm still moving. And this is all about gathering more and more information. But also all of this information in the background is going to help tie this in, as well as create a very good model of the stuff in the foreground, the windlass itself. And once again, moving a little more quickly now, you can see I've come back pretty much to the start point where I was. And we're going to be able to capture all of these completely unique wood textures. So that's the windlass. Now I also took some pictures of some more delicate materials, and this is going into the captain's cabin, and outside the cabin is this VOC tapestry or fabric or sign or badge, I don't know what it's properly called. And you can see how many pictures I've taken of it. Notice this, some kind of salt or paint or some kind of texturing happening there. And also this is quite old, and some of these pictures are going out of focus, but in some of them you can see the stitching quite well, and you can also see how it's curved up on this side as it's gotten old and dirty. Now I'm just going to quickly go in here and we'll open up the 3D model that's been made from that. And here it is. So once again, we've got the cameras turned on. So that's the blue panels are where the camera was. I'll just turn those off and make a little bit more room here for us. And we're going to zoom right in. So you can see where a lot of images are taken of an object, you get this very compelling and exciting reproduction of the real fabric and texture and patina. I'm going to zoom right in here so you can see actually the texture of this linen and the stitching. And when we zoom in a little bit more, we start to see that we run into the limits of the texture of the file. We're seeing the actual pixels. Once again, this can be made more detailed, but there are limits to this particular computer's processing capacity. But there are very few limits to the kind of detail you can capture with an ordinary camera, and that's a very exciting thing. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is we're going to go in here and look at below decks. So this is in the main cargo area and living accommodations for the crew. As you can see, it's very dark down here. And in fact, it's so dark that I had to turn on the ISO for the camera, the sensitivity of the camera, all the way up to, I think it was 6400, and hence there's an awful lot of purple noise occurring in the blacks. However, this will still stitch together. So like the main deck, I'm shooting around the middle, which in this case, I was using this particular triangle shape in these bricks as a way of making sure that I was getting the same area in the picture as I moved around the room. So I'm moving around with my back to the wall, shooting across the room. This is a very dark, very cramped, very busy space with lots of things to fall over. Once again, I was very short on time, and I was crawling around like a monkey trying to get as far back as I could. And I'm trying to get behind these steps that go up out of the space through the hatch to create tie-together points. And in fact, when I go back, the main hatch cover, which is up here, is going to be removed. So this whole space will be flooded with much more light, and this will work out much better. Even so, this will stitch together, but the resolution of the textures will look as bad as the photos do. So lighting is very, very important. Okay, so that's the approach on how you shoot lots and lots of pictures and gradually build up the ship piece by piece. And as you can see, that's what I'm doing over here. I've got all these different pieces of the ship which I'm putting together. I hope that makes it very clear how you can photograph the whole broad scale of the ship to get the outline of it, as well as these extreme details, as well as specific spaces. And I'm just going to go back out to the wide shot of the ship, or rather the wide model of the ship. And my computer's running a little bit slow here because we've got an awful lot we're asking it to do. So I'm just going to turn off the textures so we can look at just the 3D model. So the approach is to move quickly, but to take lots and lots and lots of pictures. And it's also extremely important to get lots of overlap between those pictures, and it's extremely important to shoot down into the spaces between objects in order to get separation. And that will mean that you can create these models that give you an overview of the objects that you simply couldn't have without having put all these pictures together.